What are you after in the state visit in the Philippines?
Well, the President is very much looking forward to visiting the Philippines. As you know, the Philippines is one of our longest treaty allies in the Pacific. The Philippines is really central geographically and also central philosophically to the President's policy that is founded on the importance of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. And then, of course, the Philippines have been great partners with us for a long time on issues of security and fostering a security not only in the Philippines but broadly in the region. And most recently, the way that our forces played a contributing role to this very difficult, tough campaign in Mindanao against these brutal, murderous enemies of all civilization. And so we are bound together in so many ways through a shared history, which hasn't always been, it's not all rosy colored history, but it's been a history that has been dominated by a very positive relationship that has benefited the people of the Philippines and the people of the United States. And as you know, there's a very large Filipino-American population who all of us love. I mean, they're the most hospitable, fun people to be around. And you can always count on great food and lots of photos.
National Security Advisor, I mean, can I ask you, between
Yes.
China, North Korea, and ISIS, which do you consider, or cybercrimes, what do you consider the greatest threat to the region?
Well, these are a combination of threats and challenges and some opportunities, right? So of course, the most immediate threat comes from North Korea, and we really appreciate the effort of the Philippines and President Duterte to really constrain North Korea's commercial activities, their illicit activities, their profit-making schemes, where they use this kind of form of slave labor. They engage in all sorts of organized crime activities. And so it's really an opportunity now for all nations to constrain, isolate North Korea politically and economically, because we want the leadership there to conclude they have no option really but to denuclearize. So I'd say that's the most immediate threat. There's some long-term challenges, and what we would hope for is that all countries across the Indo-Pacific recognize the importance of free and open freedom of navigation, freedom of trade and economic relationships that aren't based on subservience of one country to another,
Yes.
but relationships that strengthen the sovereignty of all nations. And so this will be a big aspect of the President's message. And then, of course, you have this terrible threat of these terrorist organizations who use an irreligious ideology to foment hatred and to use that hatred to justify violence against innocent people. And so when the President met with leaders of over 50 Muslim-majority nations in Riyadh and in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, he emphasized three things that he'll continue to emphasize and to work with leadership in the Philippines as well as across the region. And the first of these is we must deny them safe havens and support bases. Yeah. And the very courageous Philippine soldiers and armed forces in Marawi, they demonstrated the Filipino determination to deny them safe haven support bases. The second is to cut off financing, their ability to generate funds and mobilize resources. And the third is to combat their ideology. There are leaders in each of these areas across the Indo-Pacific region. Singapore, for example, very good at financial actions and helping maybe to understand better how to cut off these financial transactions. Right. And then, of course, Malaysia, as you know, has taken a lead over the years on countering the ideology. And so I think this is an opportunity for the leaders to have discussions around all of the security issues you mentioned. And I think that what they'll do is, to look at it positively, they'll identify opportunities to improve security across all these areas.
The United States is in a difficult balancing act right now because President Duterte has said that he will pivot away from the United States to China and Russia. I mean, how do you look at that?
Well, the United States has confidence that that pivot could turn into a pirouette. and the reason is, if you look at the systems, just look at the systems, right? Just look at what countries have to offer I mean, which club do you want to join? Right? I mean, I would just ask you, what party do you want to go to? And so I think that the American people are more confident than ever under President Trump's leadership in the American system, in our respect for sovereignty, our respect for sovereign nations, and our desire for our partners and allies to be strong and independent countries that are part of alliances based on mutual benefit and mutual respect.
President Duterte has been called the Trump of the East. President Trump has been called the Duterte of the West. I mean, they're both maverick leaders who have in many ways moved against what their establishments, what the institutions have done. How do you handle that? I mean, what does that mean for the rest of the ripple through the rest of the world?
Well, what the president has done is he's developed very close relationships really across the world that has helped not just advance American interests, but advance the interests of all civilized people. And if you look at really what has happened, just look at what's happened in the Indo-Pacific region since the horrors of World War II, the bloodiest war in human history, and the Filipino people bore the brunt of that war in many, many ways. Look at the years since then.
Yeah.
And due mainly, I would say, to U.S. engagement in the region. Hundreds of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty. There has been no great power conflict. Economic growth and prosperity has occurred at an unprecedented rate. And so I think what we have an opportunity to do now is to celebrate in the Philippines. We should celebrate the role of the United States in the region across the last 70 years, consolidate some of the gains that have been made, and then help develop a vision. I think this vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific ought to be attractive broadly. But what the president doesn't want to do is come with just his vision and say, please sign up for this.
Right.
What he wants to do is hear from leaders in the region about how they would like the United States to engage from a security perspective and from an economic perspective. And certainly the United States, as it has always done, has done so in a way that is mutually beneficial.
President Duterte, in his conversation with President Trump, actually supported President Trump, and President Trump supported President Duterte's very controversial war on drugs. How will that play out, and will the United States continue to push for human rights? The Philippines has been criticized for this war on drugs.
Well, the United States always pushes for human rights, and what President Trump prefers to do is to have sincere conversations about these issues. As you know, and as we know here in the United States, drugs is a terrible scourge. But what also all of us understand is the best way to deal with this kind of a severe problem is through preserving the rule of law. And so these are conversations that leaders can have in a frank and open and private manner, I think, and it would be helpful to both countries to have that conversation. As you know, the president has just declared a national emergency involving opioid use, and I mean 68,000 people a year, right? I mean that's a huge number, and so the president is very concerned about the drug problem, but also the way that we will go after that here is to do it through more effective law enforcement, as well as a broad range of other actions, including education. But there's a full strategy that I think you might know that Governor Christie of New Jersey is helping lead up. But this is another area that we can work on together is how to combat this very severe problem.